This podcast is sponsored by funkytshirts.co.uk.
I love everything she's in.
Except for Game of Thrones, you didn't like that.
Well, yeah, but I've seen some of the scenes she's in, and she's brilliant in them scenes.
Vala Morghulis. My God, that does not do it justice. This film was crazy. It was crazy, but in a good way. Good crazy, in my opinion. Hello there, movie fans, and welcome to More Movies Podcast, episode 64.
Tyler and Endicott, born 11/27/64.
Hello there, and welcome. You are tuned to the podcast that likes to talk about all things movies, cinema, film. My name is Greg Fisher. I am joined, as always, by my good friend and colleague, Mr. David Roberts. How are you doing this week, Dave?
I'm doing very well, sir. The summer is in full swing. We've watched lots of great movies. It's been a while since we talked about them, so I'm quite excited to get tucked into it.
Absolutely. It's been a couple of months since we've been on, so there's quite a few movies to get through today. Some we have been out to the theatre to see, some we have watched from the comfort of our own home. So let's get tucked into it. Okay, so the first movie on our list is something we were waiting quite a long time to watch. We didn't catch it when it was in the cinema, but it has since been released for everybody to see at home, which is Godzilla Minus One, 2023, directed by, let's see if I can get these pronunciations right, directed by Takashi Yamazaki, written by Takashi Yamazaki and a couple of other of his friends there. It stars Minami no, I'm going to give up there. Stars some really good Japanese actors. It is a Japanese film. Godzilla is a Japanese concept.
Run! It's Godzilla! It looks like Godzilla, but due to international copyright laws, it's not.
It came out of Japan all those years ago in the 50s. I think we had the first Godzilla film. Correct me if I'm wrong. They made scores of them. Obviously, it's been brought back more recently in Hollywood makeup with Godzilla vs. Kong, things like that. There's quite a few monster movies there. But this one is a Japanese film. And it takes place just after the Second World War. Obviously, at the end of the Second World War, Japan had a couple of nuclear bombs dropped on it. And in a way, I think kind of Godzilla is a sort of cultural offshoot from the fact that happened, because the idea that is, an irradiated monster in a way, born from the ashes of some sort of radioactive explosion or whatever. I'm sure that's in the lore there somewhere, but obviously this is a new film. It does kind of look like the monster is very much, akin to the monster we see in some of the Hollywood films in some ways. But this is a completely different film from anything that Hollywood have done recently. In my opinion, it was a hell of a lot better than any of those recent Godzilla movies, especially Godzilla vs. Kong, as I mentioned, etc. We did watch that together a couple of years ago. This was miles and miles better, I thought, in terms of its writing. It really got you into the film. The special effects, I believe they won an Oscar for it. That's how good that was. Dave, what did you think?
Yeah, well, as you say, kaiju film, monster film, Godzilla. Obviously, I think it's the franchise with the most entries in, I believe, as a film franchise.
Wow.
And as you say, it's Japanese film. I think when you break it down, the first Godzilla films, the first 13 or so, are the Japanese ones, and they're considered the best. And then after that, it was all Hollywood, and they basically ruined what the point of these films was about, because, as you alluded to, the film was an allegory for World War II and the nuclear bomb being dropped in Nagasaki and Hiroshima. It's all an allegory for America, nuclear bombs, the end of the war, what they're feeling. And so that's what the films were originally pointing at, It's kind of a way to deal with those emotions and realities after the Second World War. But ever since then, Hollywood took over. They didn't want to deal with that kind of thing. So it was just a silly old monster movie that everyone thought was a pile of poo, basically.
That is one big pile of shit.
We've had obviously in the last year there's been another Godzilla film, which has been a Hollywood film, which I haven't watched, but it looks dreadful. When we've seen a couple of the recent entries in the King Kong Godzilla monsterverse thing they're creating, and they've been terrible. As you say, this is a very Japanese film, a much more grounded story in reality, and it's kind of very similar in its plotline to the original Godzilla film, but fantastic performances. It won the Oscar for special effects. The special effects here are brilliant, and the cinematography, it does look beautiful. And the set design and stuff, I thought, because away from all you got all the monster and the Godzilla itself and the boats and the sea and all this and destruction. Okay, great. And that looks fab. But the set design of the destroyed Japanese towns and cities, the rubble, the characters, the little nuances throughout really sold the film for me. I was sitting there going, I believe this. I believe this is post-war destruction and everyone is depressed. And so there's a really heartwarming, heartfelt story going through it. And really, I mean, you only see Godzilla probably for 20 to 30 minutes in the film, I'd say, on screen. The rest of it is all taken up by this beautiful story of people surviving and what do they, wanting to survive and dealing with the guilt of surviving the people who they've lost, which it's just so much better than what you get from like a Hollywood interpretation of these kind of films. I think you're just like, wow, this is story and not just action, flash in the pan stuff,
Yeah, in the American films, it always seems to be, basically, if you could boil it down, the monster's come into the city and he's going to destroy us all. What are we going to do? But as you've just pointed out, this film is character driven. It's about people. It's about the after effects of the war, how they were affected. How are they going to continue living in this world post-war? And as you say, Godzilla is kind of like an allegory for I don't know, I suppose American imperialism coming into Japan afterwards, and the shame of their loss of honor or perceived loss of honor, losing the war, because they famously, would rather die than lose. So you had a lot of suicides and stuff just in the general population, I think, as things were coming to a crunch. But, straight away, that first scene with the kamikaze pilots and they're on that island, aren't they? And Godzilla comes, and it's all, you don't really see much of him. He's kept in darkness. It happens at night. He's in the shadows, and that was just a thrilling opening to set the scene for the main character's story. He then returns to his home. He is, like you say, ashamed because he's supposed to have been a kamikaze pilot. So it's like, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be dead, You're supposed to have killed yourself in a kamikaze attack. So he's dealing with that and the emotions of that. And then he gets caught up with this young girl who's got a baby. It's about sort of, I say, rebuilding and building a new society on top of the ashes of the old one. And then that's what the film's about. It's not just about a monster that's going to come into Tokyo or whichever city it is and just hammer it, even though that does happen. And it is fantastic when it does.
Yeah.
Because all of that other stuff aside, if it was just a spectacle and you wanted to have, you want to see Godzilla wreak chaos all over the city, it's fantastic how they did it in this one because it's all period stuff. So, you haven't got the modern trappings of the city. Like in that one we were talking about, Godzilla versus Kong, there's these big glass skyscrapers and everything. But this is more sort of, old world in a way. And I thought that was, like you said, they did an amazing job, cinematography and production design. It looked fantastic.
It did, and it kind of deals with it more as like modern mythology. And as you say about they're looking after each other, they're all orphaned.
Yeah.
And so it's like making their own nuclear family from the ashes of it all, which, it's a great allegories in there, about all these things. I think the only question I had at the end of it, and I don't know how I really feel on this one, but I was getting, they survive at the end kind of thing. Well, it spoiled exactly what goes on.
No.
But I kind of felt like maybe they shouldn't have. And I'm not sure.
You always want everyone to die at the end.
Well, yeah, maybe. But I don't know if it would have hammered home a couple of points a bit more. Maybe, possibly.
Yeah, possibly. But
But
I
it's
suppose,
a very realistic take.
like all movie franchises, though, they probably left the door open for sequels, you see. So you can understand why they did it. I agree with you, but at the same time, I wasn't completely dissatisfied with that. But
No.
overall, as a
certainly not.
film, it was so engrossing. And that's because of great writing and a great story. And it's nice in a way that Japan kind of takes back their own property in a way. Because like you said, it's gone to Hollywood.
Yeah.
Ever since, I think back to that early 2000s, was it, with the film with Matthew Broderick and stuff. And
Oh, yeah.
that's where I think of Hollywood taking over Godzilla and it becoming something else. Before that, the guy in the plastic suit.
Oh, look at that.
Rubbish writing on those films compared to this, which is, as I say, a character-driven story that you can really invest in for a couple of hours.
And I think as well, it's rubbish effects in those kind of Godzilla Kong ones. It's all so CGI. It's like watching, I don't know, Attack of the Clones or something like. It's like, here you go, full on CGI fest, and it just looks terrible in the way it's all done. And then, you know, this validly wins the Oscar for best special effects because it's really well done, and it's remarkable because it only cost $12 million to make this.
And didn't they use
budget.
a lot of practical effects as well?
Yeah, they had little dolls and they did a lot of like stuff, and you can see it a little bit if you're really paying attention. But it's remarkable.
And that
But, you
has
know,
its own charm anyway, I think. You can, because if
It
you've
does.
got little models, like all the Ray Harryhausen stuff or Jerry Anderson, you can, you know, when light hits those objects, it does what light does rather than, that's where I think CGI falls down. They still haven't quite got, you know, those natural world effects and how light bounces off things. And that's what gives it the uncanny
Exactly.
valley kind of sense that you think, well, this isn't real. Whereas with models and stuff, even if you can notice it, sometimes it still looks more real in a way. Yeah.
Exactly, and as I was about to say, that, you know, on a 12 million budget, and they've returned 150 million at the box office.
Yeah.
It's done critically amazingly well. An international film on a smaller scale, but achieving big things. It's like, this to me is a real success for international cinema and for kind of independent cinema, I think, a bit, because it's done tremendously well.
Well, I watched it in Japanese with subtitles, but there's also a dubbed version out there for anybody who struggles with subtitles. So we would say definitely go and see this film or get hold of it and watch it at home if you haven't already. It is highly recommended by us. Fantastic Godzilla film. You will not be disappointed. Okay, next on our list is Guy Ritchie's The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. This is starring Henry Cavill, Alan Ritchson, Alex Pettyfer. Let's have a look. Isa Gonzalez and Kerry Ells was in it. There was quite a lot of people in this. Till Schweiger was the bad guy. Played the German bad guy. Oh, Rory Kinnear as Churchill. Hilarious. So this is basically what it says on the IMDb is the British military recruits a small group of highly skilled soldiers to strike against German forces before enemy lines during World War II. So basically it's kind of pointing towards the birth of SAS and special forces that were first started during the Second World War. But let's be honest, this is more like a comic book version of that. There's probably no historical background to any of this, really. You know, very, very loosely. Things like Churchill and stuff like that. I mean, very loose. But I said to somebody after seeing it, it's kind of like a mix between Inglourious Bastards from Tarantino and The Dirty Dozen. It's, you know, if you mash those two up, it's kind of what you get here. I'm not a massive fan of Guy Ritchie's movies these days. I obviously loved him back in the Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels and Snatch days. He has made some great films, but I find personally a lot of them recently I'm just not interested in. But funnily enough, the last two that I've seen of his, The Covenant with Jake Gyllenhaal, which I thoroughly enjoyed, thought it was a great film. And this one I thought, I'm not really sold on it. I'm not a massive fan of Cavill either. But bloody hell, I enjoyed this film. It was a great laugh. And, you know, as we've mentioned on the podcast before, you know, anything that blows up and shoots and burns and kills scores of Nazis has got to be worth a look at. And this did deliver in that sense. The action was fantastic. And the humour, there was a lot of humour in this. So I found myself laughing out loud quite a lot throughout it.
Yeah, it's a jolly good job set. Great explosion. It was all very much that. Yeah, it's vaguely, very, very loosely based on Operation Postmaster. This is the kind of birth of Commando, as you say, it goes on to like SAS and stuff like that. I agree. Guy Ritchie, like his early stuff, I love, and then it all goes a bit. Done a couple of good ones in more recent years, but you know, it's been very inconsistent. So I saw the trailer and thought, but I wasn't really going to bother much.
Neither was I.
You know, but it was only after you said, "Oh, I really enjoyed it." I was like, "Oh, I'll go check this out then."
Yeah.
And I just say it's completely silly and has no basis in like. I did think afterwards. One of the things is I'd love to see this operation done seriously as well in a film. Like if there was like a proper Christopher Nolan-esque kind of war, you know, it would be probably quite good. But even in this kind of context, I say I fought Dirty Dozen and stuff as well. It's very much like that, but with that kind of Guy Ritchie edge on it, where it's all the silly lines and the look of it and all that.
Up there on the left, sir.
Yes. Oh, he made a crash.
But it kind of works because all your characters, explosive violence, kind of funny kind of caricatures of these things. And when as you say, when you go around killing Nazis on big ships and stuff, it's kind of like that's kind of what you want, you know, just like as a Saturday afternoon film to just chill out with and go, you know, it's like it's great for that, but it is nothing more than that.
No,
it's the thing to reassure.
As I say, it's very comic book, like you said, caricatures and stereotypes and stuff, and larger than life. Really doesn't really take place in a realistic world. Which, you know, we're just talking about Godzilla, and even though we're talking about, you know, a huge radioactive monster attacking Japan, but they base that in a very realistic world that it happens in. This not so much, you know. But, you know, like I say, I'm not a huge fan of Cavill, but he did make me laugh in this. His character was funny. And Alan Ritchson, who most people will know from playing Reacher, was excellent in it as well. Very funny. Very much that sort of type, you know, big, strong, muscly hero. Really good stuff.
Hazy, you're with me. We go left. Freddie, Lassen, you go right. Fill your boots, gentlemen, and bon appetit.
But yeah, my favourite character in it was Marjorie Stewart, played by Isa Gonzalez, who I thought was fantastic as that kind of, you know, femme fatale. She sort of gets sent to basically butter up the main bad guy, who is Til Schweiger, who was in Inglourious Bastards, and he was an actor that swore he would never wear a Nazi uniform as a German actor, and Tarantino persuaded him to do that for Inglourious Bastards because he said, you're going to get to kill a load of Nazis, you're like the ultimate Nazi killer.
Yeah.
So he did it, and he obviously has softened a little bit on that since, because he's the sort of big German bad guy in this, the Herr Commandant. He was very good in it, but I thought she was brilliant. And see, Carrie Ells in there playing that. He's very, you know, he's American, but he's very good at that British upper class officer type. Quite, you know, again, a sort of cartoonish actor in a lot of ways. You know, he did Robin Hood, Men in Tights and everything. And he's very good at sort of playing to that kind of level of fun, in a sense. As I say, Rory Kinnear as Churchill, that was a turn up for the Bucks.
Yeah, so, I love Rory Kinnear.
I do too.
Always great to see him turning up.
I didn't think he would be that good as Churchill, but he was pretty funny in this as well.
Just a good job, yeah.
Yeah. But a great cast. You also had Babs Alusanmokan. Is that how you say it? Alusanmokan? He was great, though. He was kind of like the intelligence guy, you know, the sort of undercover kind of, you know, man in place sort of thing to help the Allies infiltrate this island and stuff. He was the sort of the man on the ground.
Yeah,
like
and I think as you were saying about Alan Ritchson, and I've never seen Reacher.
I've only seen clips, really.
Yeah, So like I'm not that aware of him, but I was really impressed at him. Like, I mean, the size of the guy.
He's huge, isn't he?
So far, so good. Doing rather well, Hazy.
Yeah.
So I can see him taking up some roles.
I think he's one of those, like we talked about Batista. He's a huge, muscly guy, but he's got some acting chops. He's actually quite talented. But him running about with a bow and arrow and just Rambo style, taking out scores of Nazis. It was worth tuning in just for that.
Yeah, I mean that last sequence, the third act where it all takes place, of course. It is remarkable to watch. You're like, this is impressive actually. For a very silly slapstick film, it's like, this is action packed, violent, well shot, and I mean, you just know how to frame a picture.
Yeah,
it's really good to watch.
Yeah,
and it is just that point of don't take it seriously. It's just a fun caper, but for that kind of film, great fun.
Yeah.
We even see kind of Ian Fleming is portrayed on screen in there, and the guy who runs it, he's who James Bond was based on. So it's it's all great fun.
Definitely some nods of the cap there. Some great characters, real fun. Like we said, again, I'd say if you love action, if you love World War II movies, obviously going to be of a certain age if you do, but if you do. This one definitely is a thumbs up. Okay, next on our list is The Fall Guy from 2024, directed by David Leitch, written by Glenn A. Larson and Drew Pearce. Now, Glenn A. Larson, if you're as old as I am and you go back to the 80s when I was a child, he was responsible for so many TV serials such as Knight Rider, The Fall Guy itself. That was an early 80s to mid 80s TV show that starred Lee Majors, who actually makes a cameo in the film, as you'd expect, like they did with Starsky and Hutch and stuff. So it's loosely based on that. It stars Ryan Gosling, everybody's favourite Ryan Gosling, everybody's favourite Emily Blunt. Aaron Taylor-Johnson's in there as well. And Gosling plays Colt Seavers, who was the character that was played by Lee Majors in the original series. And it's basically about a stuntman who sort of doubles up as a bounty hunter, or at least that's kind of what the early 80s TV show was about. And they kind of work that in with this, it's, there's more to it than just a guy who's a stuntman. Obviously you have some bad guys, nefarious stuff going on, and he basically has to get to the bottom of it, doesn't he? Whilst there's also a romantic interest with Emily Blunt's character, who is a movie director, and quite good fun, lots of laughs, good chemistry between them two. As you expect from Ryan Gosling these days, he's just entertaining to watch. He's a very funny guy. Again, nothing too serious here or to be taken too seriously, but lots of explosions, lots of bullets flying, lots of cars crashing, doing flips, lots of funny one-liners. What did you reckon of this one?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say it was. It's not. It's not a serious film. It's obviously a comedy. So it's an action comedy. It's very much a tribute to stunt men and women, and kind of a push around the film has been to get an Oscars category for stunt people, which I absolutely agree with.
Yeah, definitely.
They do some amazing stuff in this. I think they broke the record for barrel rolls on cars in this and stuff like that. So they're obviously going for it. So all the action pieces, tremendous. Really great fun. Shot very nicely. The cast is fantastic. They've got a great chemistry, Emily Blunt and Ryan Gosling. So it just works with them. I think we saw that when they were talking at the Oscars and doing their little bit on stage. There's something about them that works. So I'd like to see more. Aaron Taylor-Johnson's always good. My favourite character though in this whole thing, Hannah Waddingham, is the agent. Chews every scene she's in. Yeah, fantastic. Love her to pieces. I love everything she's in.
Except for Game of Thrones, you didn't like that.
Well, yeah, but yeah. But I've seen some of the scenes she's in, and she's brilliant in them scenes. But yeah, she's fantastic. She's Queen, and yeah, it's a great fun film. I think it could have been funnier than it is. There's some funny stuff in there, and there's some great lines, but it felt like it could have been written funnier.
Okay.
It could have had more jokes. The plot's fine enough, you know. Obviously, it's a comedy film. It's a solid enough, but it's nothing special. But it's you know, for this kind of film, that's I guess what you're expecting. And you know, the end piece again. The third act is very strong actually for this. I think the biggest criticism that's been raised at it, and this is really interesting, really, is because people have been saying, "Oh, it's probably a bit too long."
I would have said that, but I watched the extended cut.
Well, this is it. We watched the extended edition and thought, "Oh, it's probably a bit too long. Probably shave 20 minutes, right?" And you go, "Oh well, I think it was about 20 minutes longer than the normal version." But people have been saying the normal version was too long. So you go, maybe it stretches credulity, maybe.
Well, I think the standard cut is 2 hours 6 minutes, so it was almost 2.5 hours for the
extended.
So maybe, you know, around the 100-minute mark would have been enough for a film of this caliber.
Yeah.
Who knows? I didn't get bored with it, but I did feel it. You know, like some films are long and you think, I didn't feel it, just went by. By this one, yeah, I was starting to feel it a bit, you know, feel a bit like,
I think,
come on, finish up now.
Yeah, I think there's a bit in the second act near the end where it starts to sag a bit and you're kind of going, come on, just move, you know. There's that little bit of weighing down and that perhaps hurts it a little bit. But, you know, good fun. It is funny and it's got some great moments and a great cast that, you know, deliver exactly what you want. And, you know, it's AC and all the stunts on screen and all the effects and stuff, you know, it's always great fun. And they do some crazy stuff. And actually, Emily Blunt's character, when he first gets back there, and she's kind of trying to punish him in a way, and she's it's almost sadistic.
Yeah, making him do these stunts that are absolutely frazzling his body and breaking his bones, and
it's like, oof.
Yeah, but that works, doesn't it? That's what sort of fuels that chemistry between the characters, and you know, the script wasn't absolutely amazing. It was good enough, but they really sell it, and you really believe them. So for that reason alone, it's good fun. I thought, you know, just like you said, to watch those two sort of, you know, going at each other in more ways than one is great fun. It was all right. It was good popcorn, wasn't it?
That's it. It's popcorn cinema, but good quality popcorn cinema. So yeah, it's, you know, one worth checking out if you want a popcorn film on a.
Yeah, and if you're an old bastard like me and you remember the Glenn A. Larson stuff from the late 70s and 80s, then it's worth watching, you know, without spoiling your childhood fantasies of Colt Seavers and the rest of it. They had the Fall Guy truck in there. That was the that was the famous thing. Like Knight Rider had the car, the Fall Guy had this amazing brown truck, and they put that in there. They sort of, you know, there was enough little nods and Easter eggs for the old boys. To appreciate it, but yeah, good fun. You know, what's not to love? It's a good laugh. It's not a waste of your time, but maybe just watch the standard cut. Don't torture yourself with that extra 20 minutes. There's no need for it.
Yeah, I couldn't actually quite understand why they've even done an extended cut and released it on the same day on the streaming services. It was like a bit of an odd choice, but. Yeah. I hope that pattern isn't like kept for many films. I think it's probably a bad decision.
Well, for films of this caliber, I think so. Yeah, I think they could be doing, you know, like you said, about 100 minutes is enough for something like this. But still, a thumbs up. I did enjoy it. It was a good laugh. Okay, next film on our list is a little bit more divisive, not quite a popcorn movie like some of them have been. Which is Alex Garland's Civil War 2024, stars Kirsten Dunst, Wagner Moura, Kaylee Spaney, and a host of other people. Like, what's his name? Ron Swanson played the president, didn't he? What's his name again? Nick Offerman. Nick Offerman. Very good actor. So we went to see this on the big screen, the IMAX screen, actually, the very big screen. A very divisive film, especially, I think, for Americans with everything that's going on over there. with the country being so divided politically, this probably ruffled a few feathers, rattled a few cages, because it's set in the not too distant future where, as the result of some sort of despotic dictator style president who changes the constitution and the government for the worse, and then you get factions moving against the government, and it's told through the eyes of photojournalists. Kirsten Dunst is kind of like a Lee Miller character. She's this famed war photographer, and Kaylee Spaney is like the young up and coming, wants to be just like her hero, who's one of them is Kirsten Dunst's character. So there's that element to it as well. And you've got the other guys in there, the journalists in there with them, and the whole story's told through their eyes. They're trying to get to Washington, is it? Trying to get to the Capitol from wherever they are. So it's about their journey, who they meet along the way. Gets really hairy, done very realistically, as I said, when those bullets are banging and whizzing and explosions going off. When you go to see this film, you know about it. There's nothing. It was done in a very, very realistic sense.
It was. I mean, I'll just say up front, I loved this film. I thought it was fantastic for many reasons, but it has been incredibly divisive. I think on many fronts. I think one of the things was it was advertised very much as like an action film throughout, but of course the first kind of a third to 2/3 of the film are quite slow because we're building a story. We're talking about this first journey of the photojournalist and stuff like that. Although things do happen, but it's not like, but the third act is crazy. And there's an interesting thing about the politics of this film, and as you mentioned, and then this is where it gets interesting, really, because in one way it's trying not to be reality and give its own political opinion in one sense. The idea of it's Texas and California teaming up to go against the government. Well, in real life, that's like, well, you got two opposites, right and left, right? So it doesn't really make much sense. But in this film world, it does. And so there's not something to grasp it to a reality in that sense. But it's very clear what they're trying to say about, this is a despot government. This is a fascist government that's trying to take over, and the people are revolting in a way. But neither does it clear either side of any of the charges that it has. There is brutality and disgusting behaviour on both sides of this trench warfare, essentially, between them all. And I guess it's less about the kind of two sides on a big scale, although you see that at the end, but it's these small pockets as you go throughout this journey where you go, holy shit, and it's really at times disturbing, and for that I think it works incredibly well. Kirsten Dunst, fantastic, just an amazing performance, and I think she always is really great, and you could see kind of the experience on her face of, I've seen some shit, She does that really well. And a good cast throughout, and of course our favourite man, Jesse Plemons, who was only in this 10 minutes, if you're lucky, his scene. But it's 10 minutes you won't forget.
Probably the most standout 10 minutes in the film, I'd say, that scene.
Yeah.
Because basically that's the one film that overtly alludes to the Second World War in terms of the Holocaust, because there's a pit full of bodies, and he is basically some real, fucking Nazi bastard that's very racist, kills a couple of them right on the spot because of their backgrounds. The guy says, where you're from? Hong Kong? China. You're from China. Bang, shoots him, dead. That's it.
I'm American. What kind of American?
Yeah, exactly. What kind of American are you?
And that sums up the film, doesn't it?
Yeah, but it did a very good job of muddying the waters of who's who and who's on whose side, because the characters themselves sometimes find it difficult to ascertain whether they're government forces or the revolutionary forces. They're never quite sure, you know. So it does push this idea that of in a civil war, things are very, very... there's no worse kind of war than a civil war, you know, because it's brother killing brother, sister killing sister, etc. And, you know, a lot of war crimes are going to be going on in your local neighborhood. You know, when they get to that one place and they've hung people in the barn and all sorts. And it just makes your skin go cold watching some of it, because although it is set in a fantasy world, it's very akin to our own. Like, we've just been talking about the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, which is bombastic, larger than life, definitely doesn't take place in a realistic world, and the action is fun. It is fun action, you know. It's kind of like that kind of action, whereas this, it's the opposite. The action is horrific. It really, like I say, your ears are ringing, it's deafening. It tries to show, I think, the real side of war. And now and again, because they're photojournalists, you get those scenes where they're taking those stills of people bleeding out, and, you know, the kind of thing you've seen over the years from Steve McCurry and people like that have taken these, you know, war photographers and Don McCullen, all his kind of stuff. As I say, Lee Miller, obviously a big influence on it. But it was interesting, I thought, to tell that story through those eyes, rather than being people in the forces with guns and fighting each other. They're almost like independent. But as with a lot of the things that have happened in America in recent years, especially during the Trump administration, there's this idea of the press is the enemy of the people. So they had to, you know, when they end up with Jesse Plemons and stuff like that, never mind the fact that some of them are from different ethnic backgrounds, the fact that just that their press is a danger to them, because some people consider the free press to be, you know, enemies of the state, especially when you're trying to sell a certain agenda. You can't have people running around actually, you know, looking at it from a different point of view, or reporting things from a different point of view. So it had a lot to say like that. Like you said, I think it tried to not be too far on one side or the other, but it still had a sort of, you know, a sense of, you know.
Well, I think it actually works better, I think, because it doesn't say, oh, I'm picking a side here in real life. And it goes, we can be generic with this, but it all applies. And you actually get kind of more callbacks, as you see, to like Nazi Germany, to like South American states, the Soviet Union. You get more calls to these kind of regimes, North Korea, things like that, with little moments going on than anything else. And it's like, to me, saying this has happened elsewhere, it can very well happen here, you know. And it's not a stone, you know, it's not too far a stretch of the imagination for things that are going on there. And it does a tremendous job of telling that story. And it is right. It's much better to do it through those eyes of the photojournalist than, we're following Commando Group A, you know, because that would be a bit naff, really. Yeah.
It also shows that the journalists themselves, you know, are morally ambiguous in some senses. You know, that whole idea of what is exploitation and what is just good old-fashioned good reporting, and, you know, what is staged, what was real, that kind of thing that, you know, that real war journalists have faced over the years. I wanted to mention Stephen McKinley Henderson, who plays Sammy, which we also have seen in the Dune films. Fantastic actor. I don't really know him from much other stuff, but his character, I thought in this was fantastic.
Absolutely.
You know, I won't spoil it by saying what happens, but especially in that conclusion to that Jesse Plemons scene, I just was like amazed by that. I was like, oh my God. So, he was great in it. Really enjoyed that side of it. Good performances.
It is. And then obviously you get to the final act and the action is incredible. It's, you know, street fighting, street to street, on the ground. In
Washington, D.C., right outside the White House.
Choppers and missiles going everywhere. Incredible. There's some really great stuff in the White House at the end, you know, which I won't spoil. But lots of questions asked there, about what's a war crime, what's the right thing to do, what's morality, what's real, etc. With the arsenal, I think, being the action's great as well. Most finish it all off.
Most of the complaints I saw about it were about that last 5-10 minutes in the White House. Some people had issue with, what becomes of Kirsten Dunst and Kaylee Spaney's characters there, if you remember that. Some people questioned, that whole idea of the president and his last words and all this stuff, and seemed to have issue with it. But maybe that was just having issue with it as a movie rather than as a political statement on either way. But I think that's what people need to remember, as real as it may be, or as much as it pertains to a lot of stuff that has been going on in the political sphere in America in the last few years. It is just a movie.
Yes.
It can be taken seriously, or it could just be treated as on the same level as the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, in that it's just pure fantasy. It's just a movie. You're just supposed to go and come out after a couple of hours and you can have a conversation, and, just like you can with any other movie. So, it's kind of came and went now, hasn't it? Because it was a while back that we actually saw it.
Yeah.
And it's not one of those movies that's, like a lot of things nowadays, everything's so disposable, but it hasn't really had, people aren't really talking about it a hell of a lot. Again,
no.
Even though the political situation over there is, they're in a lot of trouble over there in terms of what's going to happen in November, because, we know why. So, it's not like these kind of things have gone away yet.
No, not at all, and that's why I thought it pertained so well as well. But I'd say it has kind of just disappeared from the discourse again. A lot of people didn't watch it or weren't intrigued by it, which is a bit of a shame, I felt. But it's one of them things. But it did well. I mean, it 50 million budget to 120 million at the box office, pretty good going.
Yeah, not bad
especially
at all.
For an independent film. It's A24's most expensive film. It's done quite well. They've knocked it out of the park again, as A24 seem to do. So, it's interesting, but I fully enjoyed it. I've heard and read a lot of the opposite, and there's some interesting reasons, but I came out and thought that was really great.
Me too. I thought it was a really good film. Very well put together. Very interesting, very different, something original, something that kind of has something to say about the times we're living in, as well as just being a damn good watch as well. Do you remember that scene at the start where, one of the protesters or revolutionaries, whatever you wanted to call them, has the huge Star Spangled Banner and just has a backpack on, and they run past Kirsten Dunst, and she knows what it is. She knows that they're basically a suicide bomber. And that happens within the first 5 minutes in the film, and I thought, oh my God, this is what we're going to be watching here.
That's it. It was very,
heavy.
It was, to me, it was throwing back 7/7 bombings, Madrid bombings, things like that, and IRA bombings. It was all floods into your head, and that's what's so powerful at things like that. I mean, it kind of does make you think, and it's an incredible scene, and it's I'd say a great way to start things off and kind of go, this is what we're dealing with, and that was a kind of sensory kind of Jesus, very loud, very explosive, but really great stuff. And I recommend people watch it.
Oh, definitely, especially, film fans. It's great. You got to watch it. You got to see. You got to have an opinion and see what you think of it. But yeah, I mean, Alex Garland said, he's going to quit making movies or something after that. I'm not sure why, but I hope he doesn't, because he's got things to say. Some of his films, Ex Machina and stuff like that, I think have been really good. Yeah,
I don't buy that comment at all. I think it was something that was said and it was taken out of context, etc. I think he's got another project coming up, so I think it's a bit of just something that was said rather than reality. A wild goose chase, hopefully. Well, there we go. Civil War again. Thumbs up. Definitely see it. I mean, it's a tough watch, but I think a necessary one in terms of cinema. Absolutely.
At this point, we'll just take a couple of minutes to have a quick word from our sponsors, funkytshirts.co.uk. This podcast is sponsored by funkytshirts.co.uk, a t-shirt design brand shipping internationally. Check out their extensive and ever-increasing catalogue of cool t-shirt designs that include collections such as film and TV, retro comics, funny designs, animals, and much more. All products are produced and shipped from locations as close as possible to the buyer's address to avoid extensive and unnecessary shipping costs, and all t-shirts are made in an environmentally friendly process. Keep it funky and order your t-shirts today. Okay, next film is another A24 production. This is Love Lies Bleeding. It was directed by Rose Glass, co-written by Rose Glass and Weronika Tofilska. The IMDb synopsis says a gym manager, Lou, falls for Jackie, a bodybuilder who is passing through town en route to a competition in Las Vegas. That sounds quite innocuous, really, doesn't it? Almost a little boring, like who cares? Gym owner falls in love with a bodybuilder, so what? But hell, my God, that does not do it justice. This film was crazy. It was crazy, but in a good way. Good crazy, in my opinion.
Crazy.
Kristen Stewart. So obviously there's a romance between her character and Anna Baryshnikov's character, but there's a lot of murder that's going on in between as well. This film is one of those films that's got a lot to say about a lot of things, but at the end of the day, it is kind of a dark, noirish crime film, really. It pertains to be about bodybuilding and stuff like that, but that's just the dressage of it. And if anything, it's kind of like just some sort of an analogy for some things. But really, it's about two people being in love, but their situation and their surroundings are kind of getting in the way of them just being happy in love together. So in order to be that, there's a lot of murder goes on. There's a lot of craziness goes on. And I thought this was like really enthralling film to watch. I was sort of hooked from the start right to the crazy ending, which I won't spoil, which was crazy but was also amazing. Beautiful looking film, really great, strong performances. Ed Harris as this sort of evil father figure, gangster number one was brilliant. Love to see Ed Harris in anything. Love it when he turns up. He's such a passionate and excellent actor. Love him in everything he's done. This was no exception. So yeah, blew my lid on this one. It was like, wow. What did you think of it?
Well, yeah, it's a neo-noir lesbian romantic crime thriller. That's I guess would be the summation. I think concurring with pretty much everything you say, that I loved it. I thought it was great. It very much reminded me of like a Coen Brothers film or something.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. Once it gets going, because as you say, what this is really about is crime and murder and mystery and
love,
all these things going on, and love is a central kind of binding to it all.
Mm-hmm.
The performances were fantastic from all of them. But especially Anna Baryshnikov. I've not seen her in anything before. No. I thought she was fantastic.
She was.
It's another A24 classic. So they seem to hit the nail on the head with these things,
We love them, but there's a lot of people who hate A24 films. Of course, there's gonna be, but some like A24, they're so crap.
But they probably like Marvel films.
Yeah, well, I like Marvel films, but I like some of the Marvel films, but. I don't think that's the, you can't say, someone who likes that are not going to like this. It just seems to be the people who hate A24 films. There's a lot of different reasons why, but I think for our time now, for our age, they make the most interesting stuff, the stuff that sort of, look at the ones we've watched, Bones and all of these great, we just talked about it, Civil War, taking a chance on stuff. It's Hollywood cinema, but it's got that indie slant to it, and it got creative. Yeah. They're using a lot of young creative people and letting them, create their vision on screen, and I really appreciate that about them.
Yeah, and I think what's great about them as well is there's a singularity because they let them do their own thing rather than interfering as studios do. There's a single vision there.
Yeah.
And so there's always coherence.
Better writing,
the writing's solid,
yeah.
you know. They work with great people, they're interesting, creative. Now, the thing is that I haven't enjoyed every A24 film.
No, of course not.
But I've always come away going, well, maybe they may not have enjoyed it, but I'm impressed at what they're trying to do, either production-wise or as an idea, that, you know, whatever. So I think they're really solid in that way. Now this is just another great example of that for me.
Definitely.
And it's a great story. I mean, there's a scene at the end, which we've discussed, where I'm like, that may be out of tone with the rest of it. But all in all, fantastic all the way through. Very entertaining. I wasn't even expecting it to be that interesting because it's just another film.
Well, yeah, if you read that on IMDb, you just think, so what?
Yeah.
But so it doesn't sell it. It doesn't sell it.
It doesn't, but you put it on, it's like, this is a real treat.
Yeah.
And it looks great. Great music, great acting, great story that's great throughout. Ed Harris, of course, steals the show.
Amazing.
As he does. I love him to pieces.
He's so dark in this. He's so nefarious.
He is. Yeah.
But on a level that's kind of relatable, if that doesn't sound too weird, you know, on a level that he still comes across as someone's dad, as somebody who is kind of real in a way. He's not a caricature bad guy, even though, you know, he looks it. But he does. He's
the thing is,
that,
it's right, that scene, which we won't say what happens, but the scene where he really kind of takes control in, it's like, you totally get it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, well, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Fantastic all the way through. Well worth watching.
Oh,
it's
definitely.
a great thriller. It's well put together. And it wasn't too long either. It was just, it flew by.
Yeah.
It's like,
hour 44, but it doesn't even feel like it. It was great.
No. Fantastic. I want to see more of this kind of thing.
Oh, definitely. And definitely very original. I mean, yes, I understand what you're saying about that final scene, because even myself, I was like, what the fuck? I was literally like that, because it does take you out of it a bit. But I didn't let myself say, oh, that spoiled the film for me or anything. I thought there's something more to this. There's some sort of, again, an analogy going on here that is bigger than just what it appears to be, you know, without no pun intended. But like you say, I totally agree. I want to see more, you know, A24 stuff like this that just takes a chance, uses great actors, really well written story. It's got a sort of dreamlike quality to it as well, which sort of pays off in the end with that bit, because, you know, you got all these visions of the pit there, you know, that pit where, or a canyon that, you know, things keep leading back to, and you find out why and stuff. But I mean, come on, this is a movie with Dave Franco in, and we enjoyed it, so it must be good.
I don't mind Dave Franco. He's harmless enough. But what this actually reminded me of as well, which we've recently watched and I really enjoyed, was Leroy, Texas.
Haven't seen that one yet.
Watched it recently. Kind of similar vibe, you know. It's a thriller. It's that noir kind of way in it, bit Coen Brothers again kind of thing, but with like a modern kind of twist on it. I probably enjoyed it, you know, and I would say it's similar in ways to this.
It's almost what do they call it? Neon noir. You know, it's got that sort of.
Yeah.
I watched that Last Stop in Yuma County, which was very much a neo-noir, but I would say that was probably, it wasn't like this film. It was a little bit more traditional noir with a modern setting, but basically that film, you could have made it in the 1940s or 1950s and it would be the same film, you know, whereas the Leroy one, by the sounds of it, is a little bit closer to this A24 vibe. But there we go. Love Lies Bleeding, definitely worth watching. In our opinion, it's a thumbs up from us. Fantastic original film. If you've seen it, let us know your thoughts in the comments. Thumbs up. Okay, next up is Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga. This was directed and written by George Miller. Also assisted on the writing by Nick Lathoris. Stars Anya Taylor-Joy, Chris Hemsworth, Tom Burke. It is a prequel, in a sense, to Fury Road, which was the last Mad Max film he did a few years ago. So this is Charlize Theron played Furiosa in that film. So they've taken that character and kind of done a origin story, which is what it is. But it's in that world, that Mad Max world. As I said, George Miller, who's, excelled doing these films, if you ask me. When I was growing up, I loved the Mad Max films, especially the second one, Road Warrior. I thought I had it on videotape. I used to watch it. I thought it was fantastic. Back in the days when I liked Mel Gibson, I thought, this is such a great film. And that film above, I think more than any of them, has been the most popular. And it's the one that they use most of all, this idea of driving gasoline or whatever, food, whatever it will be, and pirates attacking the tankers and stuff. This is the whole bit that they kind of repeated that in Fury Road. They repeat it here in Furiosa. So it's more of the same, but I got to say, when I watched this, I was straight away, first 20 minutes, this is brilliant, because it's got the humour as well, which I think is very important, and very Australian kind of humour. They're very similar to us in that sense, that they've got this kind of, almost gallows humour, some of it. It's like, maybe less American in that way and more sort of akin to, that British sense of humour, which can be quite dark sometimes. But this is a post-apocalyptic world, a world where savages rule and, there's a lot of nefarious characters, so it's kind of suits having that sort of sense of humor. But there's some great laugh out loud stuff straight away in there. You got Hemsworth this time as the main villain, even though they bring back characters from Fury Road as well, because obviously it's like I say, it's a prequel. Highly entertaining, an excellent addition to the canon, in my opinion. What did you think?
So, I think I'll preface to say my favourite Mad Max film is Mad Max 2.
Same.
I know a lot of people Fury Road's my favourite now, and it's such a great job of it, and it is a good film. Yeah, but I still
possibly a second favourite.
Possibly, yeah. I just yearn for I liked the tone and the stylings of like Mad Max 1 and 2. Thunderdome got a bit silly at times, but I liked how that was done.
But it did have Tina.
It did have Tina.
So it kind of made up for it.
But
we don't need another hero. We don't need to know the way home.
But Fury Road was great.
It was.
And Fury Road was, for Miller, a labour of love, wasn't it? He'd been working for years to get that film, how he envisioned it, that comic book look, that visual style, really took the time. And it's a great film. It's a film that goes 100 miles an hour. It does not give up. You start that film and you're on a ride for 2 hours and you're not getting off. And it's brilliant for it. It does a really great job, and it's a spectacle. Yeah. It's weird. In some ways, I think... there is similarities, obviously, between this and Fury Road. It's obviously done in the same style and all those things, but this has a lot more room to breathe. It's a slower paced story. Although we get those action pieces, there's a lot of we're telling a story and we're weaving things, which is very nice, and it does add a lot of... It enriches the story that comes in Fury Road. It kind of allows a lot of... fills a lot of the background in, which is nice, Mm-hmm. The question really is when I came in, when I first heard it announced, and my first question is, do we need this film? And after watching the film, however much I did enjoy the film a bit, I still came away going, it's actually not necessary, this film. That's one of my issues. It's like, and I guess this is me being tired nowadays with every fucking thing that comes out being, we're building a universe of films now. We're having a prequel and a sequel and a spin-off series and the comic book, and it's exhausting. Really, really, and that's another reason why I like A24 so much, because it's unique individual solo films, not Hollywood. It's
not
just
franchises.
franchising. And so that's the exhausting part. But taking that aside, was it a great film? Yes, it was a great film. I thought that the performances were great. It was funny, as you were saying, great action sequences. It told an interesting story. Her kind of revenge. It's the classic revenge kind of female revenge on the male master kind of story that we've seen in kind of exploitation cinema of the 70s and stuff like that. It's a very akin to
well,
that.
this is the thing about these films. I think they do have something to say. Sorry to interrupt you, but you made a really good point there about the female revenge against the male masters. But I think it had a lot to say about, which again is quite relevant to what's happening in America, this idea of controlling women's birth rights and what's happening in terms of their production, because again that leads into Fury Road, doesn't it? The idea of her protecting the pregnant woman and stuff, and there's more of that in this one, and I thought that had a lot to say about that. So I kind of appreciate these films for that, whichever one. I think they all had something to say about society, in terms of their analogies.
Absolutely, I think probably the strongest point of these films, all of the films, and Miller's storytelling, is that we are talking about the kind of this future world where resources have run down, and how does society reshape itself, and it obviously reshapes itself in some quite ugly ways in terms of women, in terms of the lower people who have not got the power, are treated like shit, and they're in those tunnels, dealing with the corpses and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of stuff and allegorical going on. So all that I thought was really great, and it's a great story from start to finish. The ending sequence was really entertaining. Some of the warfare stuff you had to get to see, kind of preluding to what is to come, and all the kind of villains in their little James Bond style cave. That was that was hilarious. So very interesting in that respect. One of my problems, to be honest, is something that people seem to praise a lot, and that's the style. Now, obviously, the style was introduced in Fury Road. This golden, saturated colour palette, really intense. But I felt it in Fury Road. There was a lot of care taken to perform this, and so it was really like they were doing frame by frame. We got to get this right and stuff. It didn't feel like that here, and I mean, this film has had trouble production. It was meant to come out years ago. Okay, it's 8 years since the original one.
Yeah, it's flown by, hasn't it?
It has, but I think that's a problem for the film. The film's performed very badly at the box office, and I think one of the issues, amongst others, is it's been such a gap. People have forgotten about Fury Road. It's too long for the casual viewer.
Well, as you say that, did you think that's why they did what they did at the very end? Because I don't think it's a spoiler to say at the very end, you suddenly see Charlize Theron again just for that moment, and then they have lots of clips from Fury Road as the credits are coming up. And that was one thing that I thought, have they done this because it's been so many years since Fury Road? Are they almost enticing people to go back to it? Those that haven't seen it and youngsters have just come to this for the first time. Are they just sort of giving them that taste of, go watch the second part to this?
I definitely had the same feeling. And it makes sense to do that. It does. It kind of ties it to it. But I think it's been left so long. I mean, there's been issues about. It's interesting. It's a female-led film, but there were over 70% of the audience that went to see it, and it's not a great audience, was male. It's a male franchise, this, so it hasn't performed very well. It's an adult film. It's not dragged the families in. It's not dragged the female viewers in too much, to be honest. So it's performed really badly, really. Which is really interesting, and it actually puts a sale in, because there was other films planned. The Wasteland is another one that they were going to do. That's probably not going to happen now, but But the style, what disappointed me is that, to me, it felt like it was rushed and they didn't take as much care, because I would see one scene and go, that looks beautiful, what an amazing shot of the desert and the sky up here and stuff. And the next scene would be some dodgy green screen and not focused right, and I'd go, oh, that's hideous.
Really? I didn't notice many shots like that in it.
It became really visible to me.
Right.
And I sat there going, it's really inconsistent. Like, you would just switch between things. And I've seen a lot of people like talking online about like some really bad compositing on there and green screening, which lets it down for me. It really took me kind of like, oh, you know. And I don't know why they had to push it so far sometimes, you know. It's like, I don't know. It's interesting. And to me, that's the contrast between the Fury Road and this, is the I don't think as much care has gone into it.
I don't know. I'm not sure I agree with that. I think George Miller's imagination, like with George Lucas, is now he's an old man, but he's still working, and he's got all of these new tools at his disposal to expand this universe. And that's what George did, you know, when he got to the prequels, you know, for better or worse. Like you just mentioned Attack of the Clones earlier being a CGI fest and not always looking great. But that was the one thing I thought with this is it's great to see his expansion of this universe, whereas, you know, we go back to the Mel Gibson films, as good as they were, they felt quite small and compact, as in this is happening here now, but what about the rest of the world? Whereas this gives you that impression, yeah, the rest of the world is kind of like this as well, or unless the rest of that Australian world, you know, post-apocalyptic. So I kind of enjoyed that side of it. I didn't notice too many places where it looked ropey. Maybe that's just not me, you know, me not paying 100% attention where I should have done. I thought a lot of those set pieces were really impressive. Love the art design again. Things like, you know, when they had that spinning thing on the back of the tanker, and that
Bob knocker.
Yeah, but that parachute gets caught in it, and it makes it look like an octopus as it's things like that. I think, oh, it looks great. You know, that's just from an art design perspective. I thought I really appreciate some of the choices they made there. Was it as good as Fury Road? Possibly not, but I thought it was up there. I thought it was a worthy prequel to it, and I thought she did well because she's replacing Charlize Theron, and everybody loved that character from Fury Road, because the big thing was they replaced Mel Gibson. They got Tom Hardy to play Mad Max. So I think a lot of people, as much as they may love Tom Hardy, had this problem with it, Mad Max being played by another character, because Mel was so associated with that. Yeah. And I got to be honest with you, I don't like Mel Gibson at all as a person, but it's one time I would have thought I would have liked to have seen him return for that, even as an older, grizzled Max. I think that would have suited it. But still didn't spoil Fury Road for me that he wasn't in it. And I really enjoyed this as a prequel to it. I thought Hemsworth was good. It was nice to see him do something that wasn't Marvel. You know, and he's a bad guy as well, so it's something that he's not heroic. He's a bit of a son of a bitch in it, which was nice to see. But nobody complained about his prosthetic nose like they did about Bradley Cooper's.
No, they didn't. But I did feel like he was very Marvel-y in his character.
Well, there was some points where he had the red cloak, and I thought, he's looking a bit Thor-esque here. So surely someone should have said, let's change the colour of the cloak. I mean, there's other bits where it's a bit more white or see-through and stuff, but the bits where, I mean, I love this chariot. He's got a chariot with 3 bikes. That, just like I'd say the art design perspective, is spot on and hilarious, but yes, there was moments I thought he's looking a bit too Thorish here. They could have done more to disguise that possibly, but
yeah, I think it's a good film and it's enjoyable. I've seen people saying, "Oh, it's better than Fury Road," and I totally disagree with that.
I don't think it was better.
A better ride. I think there's
this one was a little bit too long. If anything, if I want to complain about anything here, it was 2.5 hours long. 2 hours would have been fine.
Yeah,
they could have lost some of that, and it still would have been great. But yeah, not as good as Fury Road, but I'd say a worthy prequel. Still worth watching. There's plenty of action in there.
Yeah, if you loved Fury Road, I mean, absolutely go and watch it. I mean, it is exactly in that universe, and it's great, and it does all those things again. I'd say I still like the originals more, to be honest. But
you'll never beat Road Warrior. It's just so good.
I think there's something about the realistic grounding in them that makes it more believable. And stuff that,
very Australian cinema.
Yeah.
Whereas these have become a bit more Hollywood. But that's just because of the effects. And like I say, it does give him that opportunity to really indulge his imagination and expand that universe. And I appreciate that side of it because he's got a fantastic imagination. He is a George Lucas in his own way. He's, George Miller. He's just, this is his thing. This is what he does most successfully, like Lucas with Star Wars. But I would like to see more. I would, it's a shame if they don't do the Wasteland film because I'd like to see it. I'd like to see more from this universe. I don't think it's that terrible. And I think you said did terribly at the box office. I think that's a shame. It's a shame that not many more people saw it.
It is a shame.
It's worth watching.
It is a shame. You never like a film like this to do badly because it's not a bad film. But I think I think I'm just exhausted from franchises and constant sequels and stuff. So
that's fair enough.
I think that had an effect, and maybe it's not its own fault. It's like I get that, but I think if there was any franchises I'd rather watch more of, it'd be this one because like you say, they're not so family orientated. They've got the darker stuff in there. People. There was always people losing limbs and very dark sort of content in terms of we're in a post-apocalyptic world run by savages. So That's perhaps one of the interesting things because, of course, we've seen in the last couple of years, we've seen 18-rated films coming out from like Tarantino and things like Joker and stuff, big films, and they've actually done really well and surprised everyone and took great box office. And, kind of male-leaning films, male audience. So there was kind of a reprieve in there to go, oh, this is great news. Maybe we'll see some more adult films and more in that way because obviously a lot of Hollywood's been chasing the 12A, family-friendly, grab as much audience as you can. So in that sense, it's quite disappointing that a film like this has come along again, kind of 18-rated. I think it's 18.
It says R on IMDb, so I had R rating over there.
So a really adult film, and and it's done so poorly, which is bad news for getting more adult films produced by Hollywood. So that's disappointing.
Well, there we go. I would advise people to see it, especially if they've enjoyed any of the previous Mad Max saga films. So for me, it's a thumbs up. I enjoyed it. From you, it's a middle. Middle to up. Okay, fair enough. There we go. So we're getting towards the end of the podcast. We've got 2 more films to talk about. Both of them we seen last weekend, the start of July, at the theatre. So we actually went and seen these films on the big screen. The first of which is Kevin Costner's new epic Western Horizon, an American Saga, Chapter 1. I believe of at least 3 chapters. There's another couple to come, possibly more. 3 hours plus, 3 hours 1 minute. This is Kevin Costner going back to the Old West, doing what he does best, telling an epic, expansive movie which feels like a novel because there's so many different characters, there's so much going on, and it all revolves around this town of Horizon, which when we start the film is just a settlement with a couple of tents deep in the heart of Native American territory. So we got that element going on as well. And it starts to tell the story about the certain characters that are going to play a big part in the development of the town and what happens there, whether they be settlers, rustlers, gunslingers, or Native American warriors. There's lots of different characters to sort of get our teeth stuck into in this first chapter. And it very much serves as that. An opening chapter introduces the characters, sets up all the world that it's going to be taking place in, and kind of ends with a almost next time on Horizon sort of montage at the end, which probably threw a few people because, you're not sure whether to think, is this just a montage of the next movie, or is this supposed to be a part of this first film? It gets a bit confusing. But overall, as a Western, because they don't make many Westerns anymore, incredibly well made, very beautiful to look at, fantastic music, really good performances from people like Sienna Miller, who I haven't seen in anything for quite a while, so it's nice to see her. Sam Worthington's in there, Jenna Malone. Yeah, lots of different... Danny Houston was in there as well. Always good to see him. He's good. But yeah, really expansive, and, you know, for fans of Westerns, really brilliant. I mean, we went into the theatre, there was only a handful of people in there, most of them had white hair. Apart from the very young couple that were sitting down near us, and obviously me, you and Kath, there was, you know, some really old granddads, really. I suppose you'd expect with a Western. I can't imagine there's many teenagers or early 20-somethings, Gen Z or late millennials that enjoy Westerns, really. But, you know, I think you can depend on Kevin Costner for a film like this. He's done some great jobs in the past, things like Wyatt Earp and, of course, Dances with Wolves. It's a fantastic film. Also, Open Range, very good Western from a few years ago with Robert Duvall. So I really enjoyed this one. What did you think of it, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, it was good. I enjoyed it. I say it looked beautiful. This is classic Western territory. Kind of telling this very expansive tale. It's really made up of about 3 plot strands, isn't it? You know, and you're kind of following them throughout the film. And they're all enjoyable, and a great cast, great performances. They're interesting stories. It perhaps stretches it too thin, maybe. But this is a big epic tale. I think where this falls down, because I think it's very good and very enjoyable, but what falls down is you got these 3 plot lines, and this is 3 hours long. They never intersect.
Not yet.
But I think that's a problem. I think it probably becomes more enjoyable as these intersect in, probably, I'm assuming, chapter 2, right? And that's coming out next month. But because they never intersect in this film, it feels like all the stuff we watch has no resolution. And that's quite hard to do in a 3-hour film, right? Because you almost feel like, well, nothing's moved.
No.
And that's the trickiest part of it. I think this film becomes more enjoyable as we get the next film. And I think that's going to be like kind of the test of it. And it's interesting, obviously, you kind of allude to like the next time kind of thing. I mean, a lot of people have mentioned this, and we mentioned this afterwards. It almost feels like, you know, there's 3, potentially 4 parts to this, each of them 3 hours long, right? And it does kind of feel like this probably should have been a series, a TV series, and break it up a bit, and tell that story that way. And that might have helped it more, but I know Costner was very keen to get this on the big cinema screen.
Yeah.
And in some ways, that's very well deserved, because the cinematography of it is
gorgeous.
And the budget, you can tell, is there to do, you know, the raid scene we'll describe from the beginning is just amazing to witness. And there's some incredible performances in there about the family and the fear and the parents and all that kind of stuff. It's just tremendous storytelling. And I think each one has got a really interesting story. The stuff with Kevin Costner's character and the woman he meets and that story in front is really intriguing. Very interesting pattern of play going on. So it's not like any of the stories are bad and it's all great. I think it's very difficult because it feels elongated and not going anywhere so far. And I think that's where the criticism is coming from, and people not enjoying it so much. But for all its other parts, every other some of its parts is fantastic. It's classic Western territory. Looks great, music's great. It's you know, and it's a shame really that younger people aren't buying into it as well. Like it seems like it is, as you say, it's an older audience going for this. I'd be interested to see what that's like in America, you know, in like Texas and states that would be more aligned with westerns. It'd be interesting to see what the demographics are there, but yeah, across here, it doesn't seem to have that audience, which is it's a bit of a shame, really.
Yeah.
But I also guess in some ways it's not got a big Kevin Costner. We enjoy Kevin Costner, but I guess for a younger audience, who's Kevin Costner, right? Apart from the guy from Yellowstone, which again, no kids are watching.
Yeah.
So, but it doesn't have that big Ryan Reynolds, or whoever, someone in there where it's like, oh, I'll go watch the new, and maybe it could have done that. Maybe it could have gone, oh, we'll get a big name in to play a role.
Yeah.
But all in all, enjoyable, very enjoyable, and I do want to see the second part because I think the judgment will come on that second part.
I mean, from that montage at the end, which basically previews the second film, it does look like, right, everything's going to come together now. Very much like we said about the first part of Dune, where it set up a lot of stuff. The difference being, though, and I agree with you here, is that Dune felt like a film that was self-contained. If they never made the sequels, you could still watch that, and there was a beginning, a middle, and an end. Whereas this felt a bit more like setting everything up and then ended, just giving you that taster of next time. I also agree that I think that payoff will be on the next installment where things really do sort of come together. So those that did go out to see this film and really enjoy it have got something, very much to look forward to there. But I also agree with this idea of it would have possibly been better as a series, hour episodes, 9 of them instead of 3-hour films. Because it did feel like that. It felt so expansive. It was like watching something like Yellowstone or, Game of Thrones or anything else where there's a lot of it and there's a big story to tell here. So why not, because these big budget series now, they've got movie budgets anyway.
Yeah.
You watch a lot of stuff like that and it's just like watching a movie in terms of its production values. So he possibly could have done that, and it might hurt a little bit that the numbers are down in terms of people going out to see them. But I bloody loved it. I mean, 3 hours didn't feel like 3 hours to me. I do like Westerns, though. I've always liked them since I was young. I really like Kevin Costner when he does a Western. As I remember when he did Wyatt Earp, and Tombstone had come out just before it, and I actually, in the old days, I used to prefer his Wyatt Earp than I did. I think that's changed now over the years. I've more and more appreciation for Tombstone as a film, but Costner's was a little bit more realistic. It was a little bit more sort of grounded, and it didn't feel quite as bombastic as Tombstone, but that's kind of its appeal,
Yeah.
It's much more quotable, and it's got all those great character actors in it. But I still love Costner's Wyatt Earp. I love Dances with Wolves, one of my favourite ever films. Still will always be his crowning achievement for me. And as I say, Open Range as well. He definitely knows this territory. He knows how to make a Western because that's tried and tested. So that's why I was looking forward to going to see this one anyway. I will go and see the next part. I'm looking forward to it mid-August on the big screen. But yeah, I agree with those points you made though as well, that it possibly could have been better as a series.
I think just because of it's a lot to ask of an audience.
It is a modern audience. Maybe not in the 70s or even the 80s, but nowadays it's too much. It's too much to ask.
And I think it's interesting the Dune comparison there, because I think that's an interesting point, because of course Dune was made without the promise of a sequel being made. It was like, we'll see how part 1 does. So there was no part 2 made.
Well, Kev's put his own money up for this though. And that was one of the reasons I wanted to go and support it, because when an artist's like George Harrison did with Life of Brian and stuff, when people put up their own house and stuff to make these films, you think, well, at least you can do as a lifelong fan is go and support them. If we could have gone and done that and it was an awful film, I won't go and see the next part. I wouldn't just go because you want to support someone. It's still got to be great. But I thought it was, it was definitely...
But I think that's the interesting comparison there, is that obviously like Dune had to self-contain itself because there might not have been a second part because they'd not even produced it. Here, it's already filmed. Part 3's filmed. That's in editing now. So it was like they could take the liberty of going, well, part 2 is coming, so we don't have to contain this film.
No. Kev's lost his house, but part 2's coming.
Yeah.
Kev's living in a trailer on the back of the lot,
But yeah, it's then you just question it. Does that make a director or producer make bad decisions or not? I don't know. It's an interesting question. But yeah, apart from that,
when part 2 comes out, whether they'll be replaying part 1 as well for those that missed
a 6-hour session.
Well, not just to watch together, but just so those that haven't seen part 1 can catch up. I don't know.
It probably will, because it's only just come out here really, and that's coming out in August, so it'll probably circulate in the same time, I'd imagine.
But we'll say though, if you love westerns, if you love Kevin Costner films, go and see it. If you've not had the chance to go yet, go and watch it. Sit there, get comfortable, 3 hours, get yourself a big box of popcorn and just lose yourself in that world. Like I said, one of the greatest things about it was it does feel like a great novel. If you read something like War and Peace or something, the first book is going to be just a lot of introducing you to different characters, putting them into different situations and stuff, and they're all going to come together afterwards. And I thought this film, for all of its ambition, it did feel expansive, and it did feel like, there's lots to get your teeth stuck into here.
It was very classical in that way in its storytelling, and as you say, it's a great western. If you enjoy westerns, you should enjoy this. It was brilliant world building. The cinematography was fantastic. What they were trying to do is great. So yeah, it's an enjoyable watch.
He's using Native American actors, telling things from a Native American point of view, which is very important in terms of revisionist westerns and doing that part right as well. So
it is, and hopefully
it gives a voice to that plight, I think, which is a good thing.
It does. It's representative of both sides of what's going on. It's not just. It's not a 1950s Western where we're coming in and just whitewashing it all, which is obviously what these more revisionist Westerns have done since the 90s. So, yeah, it's all very positive in that sense. But, yeah, it's very enjoyable, and hopefully part 2 really sells the whole thing.
Yeah.
Hopefully. But
I'm up for it. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to go and watch it and see. But, yeah, there we go. It's a thumbs up. It's a thumbs up. It's a 3-hour thumbs up.
It is.
Okay, last movie on our list today. We also seen the same weekend, the same day, in fact, that we watched Horizon with Kevin Costner, was another almost 3-hour film. It was 2 hours, 44 minutes. It was Kinds of Kindness, directed by Yorgos Lanthimos, co-written by him and somebody else. Got a very Greek-sounding name that I'm not even going to try and pronounce right now. It stars Emma Stone, Jesse Plemons, Willem Dafoe, Margaret Qualley. This is an anthology film, so there's 3 different stories within those 2 hours 45 minutes, played by the same actors, but otherwise not related whatsoever, apart from obviously thematically. They may be related, they may not. Who knows? Hard to say with a film like this. So that was something I did not know about this film going in. I'd seen a trailer for it. It had Emma Stone rocking around in this Trans Am, pulling skids, dancing in her suit, looking cool. Yorgos Lanthimos obviously did Poor Things, which I raved about last year when we went to see it, or on the last podcast or wherever. That's back there if you want to know our thoughts on that movie. He did The Favourite with Emma Stone, which I thought was a brilliant film, really excellent. Wasn't so keen on The Lobster myself, even though I went back and watched that. And so going into this film, kind of looking forward to it. I had such a good time with Poor Things at the cinema, such a good laugh. I was hoping for a similar experience here. This, unfortunately, I did not get that experience. In fact, this was probably one of the most difficult and arduous cinema visits we've had in recent times. And I'll just, before I turn over to you, I'll say that there was 12 people in the audience when the film started. By the end, there was 4 of us left. 3 of us went together. that person left. There was just left me and you in there for the last hour. Everybody else in the audience, apart from the two gentlemen sat in front of us, left at some point or another. That's how hard going this film was. What a mess.
Yeah, it's it's a triptych fable, and it's very as we came out. I said to you that this is perhaps too European. This really stretches, the
patience
and the kind of faculties of a viewer, right? I think it was always going to be a film that I think he's a filmmaker that's going to have an audience split.
Mm.
I think you're going to have, with a filmmaker like him, and I've not seen Poor Things and stuff yet, and I really want to watch them, but he's a kind of filmmaker, that is for casual viewers. I don't know. It's not really going to work most of the time, right? And so it's looking at a film fanatic audience, that other half, that people are really into cinema, and then it's really breaking it down into what are you really into, and this is not conventional Hollywood storytelling. This is something really different, and it's certainly got that kind of European, Eastern European kind of slant to Central Eastern European of my experience. Now, I love anthology films, and so that was one of the things that drew me in. I was like, oh, great cast. I mean, it is a great cast you're looking at. And I love Jesse Plemons, and I love Willem Dafoe, and I love Emma Stone. So I was like, this is going to be great. And then it's like, oh, it's an anthology, so 3 different stories. Love all that, because I'm a Twilight Zone fan and all that. It's like, great. And, absurdist black comedy. Fantastic. I love dark comedy. I like, I like absurdist cinema. So it was like going into it thinking, okay, great, this might be really enjoyable. And I think the first story actually was probably the most conventional of them all, was quite enjoyable. It reminded me of like, is it The Game?
Yeah.
It reminded me of that a little bit. Very, very strange kind of oppressed. He does whatever his boss says. Jesse Plemons does, and if this kind of weird homoerotic relationship that's going on, and keep on constantly get to see Willem Dafoe in his pants. So he loves doing that, but but that was good. Although strange, it was like this is I've seen stuff that's very like this. But then you get into the second story, and that's when it really starts to get weird. Really, the second film is kind of Invasion of the Body Snatchers in a way. But it starts getting really weird into mutilating and all this stuff going on, and it's like, what the fuck is this supposed to be about? Like, and I think there is some overarching themes, and then we get into the third film, which is all about
raising people from the dead.
Yes, it's a cult, which I kind of love in a way, but I think by that point I was so exhausted, like some of it was really grating on my tits. So I was really, and it probably didn't help that we'd watched the 3-hour film beforehand.
Maybe not, yeah.
And a 2-hour 40 film, so it was really starting to, but there's some really strange stuff going on. By the time you kind of get to that point in the film where you're just like, oh, what on earth? Now, I think the point of the film is supposed to be about people's obsession with pleasing their masters or people in power above them.
Definitely.
But apart from that, which is quite a basic thing, I don't know what he's talking about, because there's no need for all that to tell that story.
No.
So for all the kind of fluff and boundaries around it, the weirdness and all the other stuff in it. It was just like, and the thing was, I didn't find it as funny.
No, not
as I
at
was
all.
expecting.
Not at all.
And that's the thing. I was reading Mark Commode's review of it, and he was saying, "Oh, I found it really funny. I came out laughing," and I was like, "That was not my experience of it." You know, I was like, "There's moments that are funny, but it was not a laugh out loud hoot," and I wasn't there going at all these things. I was just like, almost, it's at some points almost traumatized. It's like,
I mean, compared to things like The Favourite and Poor Things, which were very weird and had lots of different subtexts and stuff going on in them, but that's one thing you could say about both of those films, were that they had lots and lots of humour in there, lots of laugh out loud moments that came through in the performances that were just made them more enjoyable. I was kind of hoping from that, from this. I was hoping for a good laugh. No matter how strange it gets, if you can laugh, it doesn't matter, because you're entertained by it. You're going, oh my God, can you believe that? Ha ha ha. But this just became more and more morose. Like you said, that first one was probably the one with the most merit, and I could have handled watching another 2 hours of that story expanding, and find out what happens to Jesse Plemons' character, and find out more about that thread. I could have handled that, I think, the way it was going. But then it suddenly ends, and then you're into this next story. Like you said, that's a bit more like an Invasion of the Body Snatchers, talking about identity, talking about, broken relationships, codependency, all of these issues, but done in a way that, like you said, just makes you feel like, what's the point here? What are you trying to get at? I've seen one person online say Yorgos is laughing at us. I thought it probably is.
Probably is, yeah.
It probably is just like, I don't want to also rank it just because I didn't enjoy it. I think some cinema needs to be uncomfortable, needs to press your buttons and challenge you and make you question certain things. But I don't know whether this did it that successfully by splitting things into three, otherwise unconnected stories, and like you said, if you're going to do that, let's at least get some more laughs in there. Let's pack it with, some funny dialogue, some funnier scenarios to put your characters into. But there was nobody in any of these stories. There was nobody to like. Everybody was pretty despicable sort of person.
Yeah, mostly were. But I don't mind that usually. I'm quite au fait with not liking the characters. But I think one of the things as well that hurts it is you're watching 3 different stories with the same actors, but sometimes that line blurs because you've just seen them doing things in the previous story, and then it's still in your head. Yeah, and so it confuses.
Maybe that was a part of it as well. Maybe that was intentional. I don't know.
Possibly, yeah.
But whether it was or not, I just got to the point with it of thinking, please finish, please end.
Yeah. Because it went on as well.
That last half hour really felt it, I still watched it, still paid attention, still seen it through. I'm glad we did as well. But, like I said, 12 people in the audience and then at the end 4 left. And as soon as it finished, the 2 guys sat right in front of us, one to the audience. Oh, I really enjoyed that. And I just thought, what?
Some people are just suckers for punishment.
Well, it's each to their own, and everyone's got different tastes.
That's really the split I've seen online. It's like some people have really
enjoyed it. Right? Okay.
And but then there's a whole other bunch of people just going, "What the fuck?"
Yeah, too far, too much, too European, like you said, too Eastern European. A disappointment for me because I love Jesse Plemons, love Emma Stone, like you said, Willem Dafoe. Fucking hell, I'll watch any film he's in.
Yeah. And
he's always brilliant, but this was just, too experimental, too much like, we don't really care, let's just put it out anyway. It wasn't like a crafted piece, like Poor Things was obviously really thought out from start to finish, as with The Favourite. This one ain't going to win any Oscars. You know what I mean? It's. I'm sorry, but I got to say, for me personally, my personal taste, this is definitely a thumbs down. Don't fucking waste your time.
Yeah, I think I said to some people this week because I was talking to a couple of people, and I was like, unless you're really into this kind of cinema, just don't bother. This has got a specialist audience.
Hard work. Very hard work, considering the A-list performers that are in it. No, never again. But it hasn't put me off Yorgos. I'll definitely go in. I'll always be interested in what he does. And I didn't completely hate it. I just thought, no, I never want to see that again. So there we go. That is episode 64 in the can. Just leaves us with enough time to tell you about other things we've been doing online. Our most recent video on YouTube was a little bit different. It was about the Beatles, because this is episode 64, when I'm 64. And we recently also watched the redux, we could say, of Let It Be. They cleaned it up and they re-released the old 1970s Let It Be documentary about the Beatles. It was released on Disney. And so we did a video talking about who were the fifth Beatles. There's always this idea of George Martin or Stuart Sutcliffe or all these people who could have been the fifth Beatles. So we did a bit of a video about that. That's linked below if you want to see it. If you're a Beatles fan like Dave and I, please check that out. Also, a last reminder as well, this podcast is sponsored by funkyt-shirts.co.uk, so check them out and get yourself a funky t-shirt.
Grab yourself a tea and be a little bit funky.
That's right.
Funky like a monkey. And just to say, we're also over on Patreon. You can come and join and be a patron if you want to support the show and you like what we're doing. We appreciate any joins there. And we're also on Buy Me a Coffee, where you can go and make one-off donations, which always help with website costs and keeping the lighting on. And just buying us a double latte with extra mint juice in there. So we appreciate all kind of support and even support, liking and subscribing to the channel and leaving your comments. That's all just as important to keeping us all going. So yeah.
Also, big thank you to Michelle and Shane, our regular supporters over there on Patreon. Thank you so much for your continued support, guys. We love you loads, and I hope you're still getting something from this podcast and enjoying what we put out. We should also tell you about our website, moremovies.co.uk, which is packed full of film reviews and articles, top 5 articles, all sorts of cinema-related stuff. All the podcasts are on there as well. So for more from us, you can check us out there. As I say, that's moremovies.co.uk. And you can join us on social media, which is at More Movies For You, pretty much across the board. You can come and chat to us on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook. Or also, we have a Discord server. If you're a Discorder, you can come and have a chat with us over there.
And if you want to listen to this in audio-only format on the go, we are, of course, on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all the other places you go to get your podcasts these days. We're everywhere.
So that just leaves us enough time to say thank you very much for listening to or watching this podcast. And please leave us a comment and let us know what you thought about any of the films, all of the films we've talked about in this episode. Let us know your thoughts. We always love to read the comments, see what people thought. Whether you agreed with us about certain films or disagreed, let us know. It's always good to hear from you. Thanks very much for subscribing and liking the video over on YouTube. We've just gone past 10,000 subscribers, which is a big milestone for us. Huge, unbelievable. We never thought we'd get that far. So 10,000 and climbing. Thanks to everybody who subscribed and interacts with us there. And I think that's it, Dave. Any last thoughts from you before we say adieu?
No, just it's been some great films. Great to be back chatting with them again. The saga of films. Everything seems to be a bloody saga these days. But it's been fantastic, and there's lots of great films coming up, as we saw when we went to the pictures. So things like the Film Critic coming up, which looks really good, and lots of other great stuff. So really looking forward to catching some of them and talking about them again on the next episode.
Absolutely. So stick with us, subscribe so you don't miss a video from More Movies or over on the audio vendors, as Dave said. And that's just it from us now. We just wish you well and happy film watching, and just remember to keep watching more movies. Well, that's it for this video. Please leave us a comment and let us know what you thought, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe right here on YouTube. To check out more of our articles and reviews, check out our website, moremovies.co.uk, and why not join us on social media? That's at More Movies for you, across the board, you know the score. And if you'd like to support us, consider buying us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com, or you can become a More Movies patron over on patreon.com. All the links are in the description below. And to check out more of our filmtastic videos, click one of the buttons on screen now.